Jerry, thank you for that great talk. We've got a bunch of questions that let's start with this first one. Says that you posed the question that ChatGPT could be a better roommate. You also said that software engineers need to have a learning mindset, have critical thinking skills, and be socially mature. If ChatGPT fills in for the roommate role, how do you think this will impact maturing society? Maturing socially, sorry.
Well, I suppose we need to define what it means to be mature socially as well. I think at its simplest approach, if you're socially mature, you're able to deal with a society that is both kind of randomized as well as difficult. That's one of the things we do in our classroom is try and create a scenario where students are exposed to difficulties and not given necessarily the hand holding they're accustomed to as they were growing up. And so now they're in a place where they're needing to move really quickly, have their own kind of mental agility to deal with things. It's not so much whether or not you're able to make friends. That's not what social maturity is about. Social maturity is really able to deal with society in a productive way. And I mean, if I kind of go back to my own roommate and I think about how much my own personal experience with my roommate in college helped me mature and be able to make friends. Yeah, maybe a little. That's not the goal at all. The goal of educators is to be able to prepare them for society, to be able to make sure that they have the emotional maturity to be able to deal with things like failure and rejection, but also the social maturity to be able to deal with difficult people and kind of a lot of randomized things that happen to them in both their career and society itself. So I think maybe that's just a misunderstanding. It's not really about making friends so much. It's more about just being able to deal with the things that naturally come from them. So how will ChatGPT help with that? Well, it'll help with a lot. For one, it'll give them a lot of tools in their toolbox to be able to deal with things that are difficult. So, you get caught off guard and you're back on your heels and you're trying to figure out something that's difficult to kind of understand. Now you have something that's right there ready to brainstorm or even pick apart the ideas that you have and talk about something you can talk to that doesn't have any judgment at all. Sure, it might have sort of judgmental language that we've joked about here, but at the same time, the reality is it's just a machine talking about and saying, hey, this doesn't really equate to this, or it does equate to that. So I think it's probably the best thing you can have dealing with difficult situations. Something that knows almost everything, will argue with you without trying to get the better of you at the same time.
Yeah, I think another fascinating aspect, though, is the idea that these technologies might actually prepare us to have harder conversations in like a safe space, right? Where you could imagine over time, like different types of personalities that you could safely practice
Yeah,
interacting with. So I think there's
sure.
some really interesting things to explore there as well. But I agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, you could
ChatGPT,
you could
oh,
ask
go ahead.
GPT to act mean to you too. Right? You could say,
Yes,
be aggressive back to me so I can practice for an interview or something along those lines.
right.
And you use the right word. It's a safe space. It's the safest space you could possibly be. It's just you and your laptop.
Gaslight me. No, please don't do that. Okay, it does that pretty well. So ChatGPT and other models start to hallucinate based on probable truths.
Yeah.
Society today has a problem with disinformation and untruths. If humans create the recipe and ChatGPT creates the casserole, how do we get the hallucinations out? What a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you could apply that question to things we do today, and then you could start to see the answer kind of come together. So, right now, when I go to look up just a coding solution and I go to Stack Overflow, it will give me the answer. And when I'm looking at whatever that answer was from Stack Overflow, the reality is Stack Overflow is often wrong. And it can be upvoted 150 times, selected as the answer, and everybody comments thank you to it, but it can still be the wrong answer. And it kind of goes back to your roommate. So you're talking to your roommate, you give them let's say an essay for them to proofread for grammar. They aren't responsible for the grammatical correctness of your essay in the end. You still are, regardless of whatever it is that they do. So now I go to Stack Overflow or anywhere else and I get some sort of solution, some sort of technical solution. I still am responsible to make sure that that is still up to date syntax, still the correct way to do it, doesn't have some sort of logical flaw or some sort of security problem inside it. If I get that from ChatGPT, none of the rules change. It just happens to be another source of information.
Awesome. Next question. Machine learning and large language models have been around for years. What's so special about ChatGPT that has brought it to the mainstream and having this explosive growth that we've talked about?
Gosh, what do you think, Glenn?
I think the conversational aspect of ChatGPT has just made it so approachable. It makes, there's lots, even when they had the API, you kind of have to understand more about machine learning. And the fact that ChatGPT just allows any person to come in. I don't have, like, I've led teams that did AI things, but I'm not like an AI expert.
Yeah.
And I just got engrossed. And then the other thing is the progressional aspect. You could start off, everybody starts off just asking it a simple question. And then this thing dawns on you about the prompt and how powerful how powerful the possibilities are if you start to feed it more context. And then you start to learn tricks like table. I just think it's got this evolutionary aspect to it that I think just pulls people in, makes it really easy to start off simply and then just go from there. I think it's that and just the buzz. It's just had an incredible explosive buzz about it. It's everywhere.
No doubt it's part of its popularity is just the excitement of everybody doing it at the same time. But I mean, if you look back, I mean, we have to teach people I have three daughters. So as they were growing up, I had to teach them how to search the internet. So, you can just type in whatever it is you want, but there are ways to like tailor your query inside a search engine to actually get better results and block certain things out and things like that and get better. And then we see the kind of progression of that where you can use plain English in a query against data. And even then you have to use certain terms to be able to represent whatever the items are inside your data sets. But all of a sudden we get to something like this, and you can write the sloppiest, craziest, and kind of long-winded or short-winded, whichever way you want to do it, kind of question to it, and it still gives you the same answer and is able to figure it out. I think that's probably the part that people are dazzled by, because they realize I don't have to go learn a syntax. I don't have to go learn a special way of doing it. And it has this awesome kind of secondary benefit of it doesn't find that website that answers the question. It finds all four websites that answer the question and then coalesces them together into a single answer.
The distilling,
sort of
I think the distilling of the data is just amazing. The other thing is typos. Like it ignores typos. It's able to, I've made so many weird mistakes and it just gets the right thing. It's really like, wow, how did it do that?
Yeah, I don't even think there is an advantage in doing things like a plus sign or putting things in quotes or making sure that your parentheses are right in the I mean, you just write it as if you were writing to the guy sitting next to you, and it's just a normal conversation. It feels like a normal conversation, but it's just able to do some smart parsing.
Yeah,
so gentlemen,
definitely.
I have a question from the chat from Mike Baker. It says, if I determine that ChatGPT has given a wrong answer, how can I report it? How can I get it to believe the correct answer? And how does it know whether my answer is really the correct one?
Well, you can report it easy enough because there's a little down arrow, a little down thumb right next to its answer. But you can't get it through. Even if you were smart enough, and trust me, we have all tried this, to like train GPT ourselves to make it believe some sort of crazy thing or get it to say something that it's not supposed to say. Like whatever it is, we've all tried. Once you open a new tab and you're in another conversation, it's forgotten everything you've done anyway. So don't waste your time trying to teach GPT something, because that's just not the way it works. You can ask,
and there's value in that though, right? Because that was the problem with Tay. Like I thought that was brilliant early on. The fact that they created that isolation, even at the level of the session, is brilliant, because it means that, like, sure, within my session, maybe if I even succeed in teaching it to be racist or hateful, that's going to stop as soon as I leave. Like, it's not going to roll. And look at what happened with Tay. I mean, seriously, like 24 hours, that thing was spewing hatred, misogyny, racism, whatever. So I think that's really excellent that they created that model.
I think one of the things that Tay had that didn't have, that we have here, is there is a lot of human curation going on here behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see. Like nobody is sitting still and saying, let's see how this thing performs. It is, if you use it a lot, you know that from a day-to-day basis, it it splits
It
personality all of a
evolves.
sudden. It's totally different. When I first started using this, I got involved in probably January, and when I first started using it, it was compared to today, it's not even the same system. Like it doesn't even act the same, let alone say the
Yeah.
same things.
Yeah, no, I started around November, December timeframe, and it has just been, I mean, at that time, you didn't even have the log of what you told it. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
very like you just said what you said and it went away. It has definitely been evolving at a rapid pace. And also important to say that it hasn't had its share of controversy around the curation of the data, especially and it's a really, I don't know the right answer, but the way they've used humans to have to look at information that is very harmful in order to help train it to recognize things that are very harmful. It's like this really interesting ethical
Yeah.
quagmire.
Yeah.
And it's
And
what
I'll
made
say in
the
the early days,
result
I could
better.
get it to say about anything, but you got to work now. I mean, you got to
Yeah.
really work at it. So
Yeah.
So
they're
Jerry,
definitely making a difference. I think it's a positive one for sure.
uh,
And the thing is, people are like, oh, is it politically like left, politically right? I'm like, who freaking cares? Is it able to do what you're asking it to do? You're leaning too heavily on this. It's not a real roommate. It's just a
Right.
system. We're just talking
Right.
about how it could help you.
so Jerry, I have a question, another on the chat about one of your slides. What's the nominal timeline in that short, medium, long-term slide? Couldn't we change the LLMs together, check the output of one and the other to speed up or shorten that timeline?
Well, who isn't surprised at the timeline so far? I mean, we all kind of knew it was coming, and then suddenly it just drops on us. We didn't realize it was so close. I think it's okay to think about this as it's not, it's a long way away. I think we want to say that to make ourselves feel better. We're like, it'll be a long time before we won't need engineers. That's probably true. But how long will it be before AI is able to act and code like an engineer? I mean, we'd be fools to say it's a long way away, to be honest. I mean, everything is just too close, too fast. I mean, today, ChatGPT, it doesn't have a lot of like value because it is wrong so often. What it does have is a lot of like potential. That's what it really has. And so to kind of see it there, like we got to this point where we could prove that this could be done. How much further to be able to prove that it could write a method for us? That's easy enough. To write an entire class in a method already does that. To write an entire solution, well, that could take several months, years. I don't know. I mean, do we need another decade to get there? I don't think that's the case. I think those are like short, medium, and long term, just to see that what the steps will naturally be. If anything holds back AI, it's going to be the human factor of holding them back, either artificially through some sort of weird regulation, or just practically that we can't have it build this much code without us reviewing it. So it's going to take a certain amount of time for us to review it. And it's going to take a certain amount of time for us to be able to train engineers to review AI generated code. One amazing thing that I think that we haven't even thought about is that once AI is writing code, things like C# will be gone. There is no necessity for an actual language for it to write in other than directly to the machine. These ideas of like design patterns and all of the complex, is this a messaging pattern? Is this an offloading pattern? Is this, all of those things will be gone as well. We won't even look at how it's written because we use those patterns partly to make sure things are done right, and we'll be able to test them on the other side to make sure we don't need those patterns, but also because we need it to be maintainable by humans. And if we don't have those sorts of patterns and languages and code standards and things we have today, then it can't be maintained. The idea of maintaining AI generated code, that won't even be a thing, because what we'll have is we'll have AI will write the code. It'll be wrong. It'll just rewrite the entire line of business application from scratch. Like it doesn't need to go in and tweak and fix different bugs. It can just
Hopefully
write it
not for
again and
one,
again.
hopefully not for one bug.
Well, yeah, that's right. Well, it depends
Hopefully
on how
doesn't
long
have
it
to rewrite
takes.
the whole application.
Yeah.
Whoa, gentlemen, wow, I'm starting to feel really old already. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for your talk, and Glenn for asking questions. It's time for us to move on again.
I feel like we did another talk. This was awesome.
I know. So let me remind you of, as Peter mentioned at the very beginning of Code Campfire, that we're going to shift gears. And our next two sessions are going to be very technical. Put on your Code Camp t-shirt.